Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today I have a very interesting Surface here. Now this is the Surface Laptop 2, however it is visually indistinguishable except for some of the color offerings between the original Surface laptop. So before we dive too far into this, there's one fundamental thing you need to understand about this machine, and that is the Surface Laptop and the Surface Laptop 2 are probably the least repairable and least serviceable modern computing products of our era. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into it. But as always, let me give you a bit of background information. So the Surface Laptop 2 was released in October of 2018, and the only real change that occurred was they added a new color, which was black, and they added 8th generation CPUs to this. So the Surface Laptop 2 is able to natively run Windows 11 without any trickery, but that being said, you could definitely crowbar it onto a Surface Laptop 1. The question is whether or not you're going to want to do that. Both of these devices, the Surface Laptop and Surface Laptop 2, essentially feature all of the same exterior components. We do have a 13.5-inch 3x2 pixel sense display, which is 2256 by 1504, and it is Gorilla Glass 3 reinforced with a touch panel. This also supports the Surface Pen as well if you really wanted to do that, although the device is not really indicative of using a pen on the display. As an aside, the original Surface Laptop Gen 1 was released in 2017 and it was supposed to compete with the MacBook Air, which didn't really work. And then of course it also launched at the same time with Windows 10s, which also didn't really catch on. So there was a lot of gambling, I think, going on with this device and its Alcantara top, but it didn't really pan out. Both of these models have a 720p web camera at the top and a Windows Hello array as standard, which is pretty good. And both the Surface Laptop 1 and Surface Laptop 2 feature the same inaccessible 45.2 watt-hour battery. And there are varying claims, as there are with laptop manufacturers, on how far that battery could stretch. Now, one other common issue with these devices is that they had exceptionally slow SSDs, and I will point that out a little later on. And they were both in the Surface Laptop and Surface Laptop 2. Before we talk specs, let's talk about ports, because again, the ports are the same on both of these devices. Front and back have absolutely nothing going on. On the left-hand side, you do have a USB 3.0 port, mini display, and a headphone microphone combo jack. On this side over here, you have the Surface Connect port, so if you don't have a dock, there's really no connectivity that you're going to get out of that. It's simply going to be good for charging. Now, in terms of specifications, at least for the Surface Laptop 2, here is essentially what you are dealing with. And depending on the configuration, you get certain colors available as well. So this came in two CPU flavors, an i5-8250U or an i7-8650U. Both featured the Intel UHD 620 graphics. However, if you got 8 gigabytes of RAM, then you only had a choice of the 128 or 256 SSDs. If you went with 16 gigabytes of RAM, then you could get the 512 and 1 terabyte SSD. It is worth pointing out that the RAM in these is low-power DDR3, so it's not exceptionally quick. The 8 gigabytes of RAM and 128 gig SSD was in the Platinum finish only, but all of the other configurations came in Platinum, Black, Cobalt, Blue, and Burgundy. I have to tell you that holding this and typing on it and using the trackpad is actually a really nice experience, and that kind of makes this all the more tragic. You have 1.5 millimeters of key travel, which is fairly satisfying. This Alcantara finish, I really have no strong opinion about it other than the fact that it's going to wear terribly. And realistically, this kind of aluminum, I believe, magnesium hybrid chassis actually feels fairly good in the hands, and that makes the biggest problem with this thing all the more tragic, and that is it is the least repairable machine out there. I want you to think about the number $150. Now, that's Canadian, but I want you to think about that number, $150. To get inside this machine, you will be destroying a $150 part, and that is this top cover. So the Alcantara fabric needs to be removed, and then the keyboard is actually technically still attached to it and is plastic welded into place. Now, you might say, well, that's terrible. What if I want to upgrade something in there? Well, don't worry about it, because there is literally nothing inside for you to upgrade. The Surface Laptop 1 and 2 feature no modular components whatsoever, so going inside the laptop is a fruitless effort. If there are any problems with these machines whatsoever, I can almost guarantee you that it's going to be more expensive to fix than the machine it's worth itself. Unless you are capable of doing component level board repair, these things are really not worth your time. If they are, like if you can do component level repairs, then you might be able to earn yourself a couple of bucks fixing these things, but realistically, then you got to find someone that wants to buy one. Speaking of buying, the Surface Laptop 2 will run you about 250 to 550 Canadian dollars on the used market. The original Surface Laptop 1 is going to be between 200 and 350. So there is actually quite a significant price gap between these two models. Now, all of these machines will be out of any warranty that Microsoft offers, but they'd still be willing to fix this machine for you. If you want Microsoft to fix a Surface Laptop or Surface Laptop 2, it will only cost you $542.20 Canadian. Or in other words, the cost of the machine. So realistically, even though they do offer the repair service, it's really not worth taking up on. And it's probably done that way by design, but this laptop also is not really indicative to repair. What Microsoft is likely to do is obviously remove this case, destroying it, needing a $150 replacement, and then swapping out the board on the inside or swapping out the battery on the inside, which is probably going to involve swapping out of the bottom case because that battery is exceptionally difficult to remove without damaging the case or the battery itself. So overall, easily the least repairable machine out there. And that's really too bad because at $250, if you can get it on cheap, it's actually not a bad machine to look at, and it's not a bad machine to use, but it is a bad machine to repair because you're not really going to be able to do it. So, as you can imagine, I will not be taking this apart because I do not want to wreck it because this one actually works. Now, let's go back a little bit. We're going to do a startup test, and we are going to do a startup test first, just this computer by itself to get a benchmark for the boot time, and then I'm going to compare it against another machine that you probably would not expect that this would be compared to, just to see how slow that SSD is on the inside. So this is the i5 i250U variant, and I'm pretty sure it's running 8 gigabytes of RAM, so it shouldn't be slow. So let's go ahead and hit that power button and see what happens. And I do have to say, in terms of like power button Windows logo, that's probably one of the fastest computers I've seen do that. And we do a pretty decent job of getting into Windows relatively quick, but I think there are machines out there that are considerably worse in about every measurable way that are competitive against it because of that read-write speed on that SSD. As you can see, this model is running Windows 11 and of course has that beautiful pixel sense display, which is one of the things that makes Surface machines attractive, that and the fact that it's 3x2. But let's go ahead and conduct that little experiment. And here's my experiment machine. This is the T410, which is running a first generation Core i5 processor. So in terms of CPUs, it's hard to get one too much older than this. That would be even a remotely fair test. And we are going to boot it side by side with this. Now this is running a standard commercial, I think Intel SSD. So nothing special, there's no trickery going on here. And I'm really curious to see what the boot time difference actually ends up being between these two. 8 generations of Intel difference, and not a bad result, if I do say so myself. All right, so as you can see, the SSDs really do matter in terms of their speed. The fact that the T410 can even, do a showing like that against this kind of illustrates the point that if you want this machine to do any kind of extreme performance, that SSD is really going to hold it back. And that is just one of the comedy of errors that make up the tragedy of this machine. It is actually really nice to hold. It is a pleasant machine to use. There's nothing wrong with the design if you don't mind kind of sharper edges on your device. But fundamentally, it's let down by several key things. The first, of course, is that you cannot realistically repair this thing unless you can do component level repair, or you have a whole bunch of these that you can scavenge parts from, or you're willing to invest in them because you got them on surplus for essentially next to nothing. The second, of course, is those SSD speeds are slow, and there's absolutely nothing that you can really do about it. It was one of the fundamental issues that they had with the first 2 generations of this device that eventually they did address, but unfortunately it doesn't really help anyone owning these devices now. And then, of course, if anything does go wrong with them, you're paying probably a large amount of money to repair or replace. So it's one of those things that if you can get it at the right price and it's in good condition, they're not bad computers so long as they're in working condition and you are a casual user. However, if you demand performance, I think that RAM is probably going to let you down. Depending on the SSD, you're probably going to feel a little let down there as well. And of course, if anything goes wrong, you're going to be let down. It's just a matter of time. If you have any personal experience with a Surface Laptop 1 or a Surface Laptop 2, I'd love to hear your stories in the comment section down below, so please feel free to leave them there so we can all learn from your experiences. And as always, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, I am going to encourage you to do the Big 4 so you will be notified the next time I look at a computer that I can't open. So, please like the video, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so the next time I'm able to feature an interesting device like this that is rather tragic, you'll be the first to know about it. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.